Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gary Levinson. I'm the Artistic Director of the Chamber Music Society of Fort Worth. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our pre-concert talk of, believe it or not, I can't believe myself, our final concert of this season. It's been quite an incredible ride for many different reasons, but I'm really thrilled that once again we're so pleased to have our very good friend Laurie Shulman join us for this pre-concert talk. Welcome, Laurie, all the way from Virginia.
Thank you very much, Gary, and good afternoon, everyone. I just want to let you know, because someone has already asked me about this, it is total coincidence that I am dressed in TCU colors, but I'm delighted to be in spirit with today's graduates.
And we'll have a lot more fun than they do at the graduation.
There we go, especially if it's outdoors.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, we have several unusual treats for you this afternoon. These Reinhold Gliere duets for violin and cello were completely unknown to me, and it was such a joy to get acquainted with them. I am always happy to see a female composer on one of these programs, and what better pairing with the Robert Schumann Quintet could we possibly have than Clara Schumann's piano trio, which is widely regarded to be her finest piece of chamber music. And then following intermission, we have the debut of Daniel Uglans, who has a very special connection to our artistic director.
That's right. He is our son, and most importantly, he has been known to us and our board practically since the time he was born. He's come to concerts here. He is now a third-year student at Northwestern, and he's performed the piece that you're about to hear at his graduation recital. So he's a really well-seasoned baritone. Looking forward to working with him on a professional level.
And then concluding the concert is, of course, that beloved quintet that we all love so much, the Robert Schumann Piano Quintet in E-flat major. But we're going to start our discussion today with an exploration of the Gliere duos. I'd like to play the first example for you, which is from the Prelude, the first of the ones we're going to hear, just so that you can get a sense of how cleverly he intertwines the lines of music between the two instruments. You'll hear that one of them is playing in double stops so that you hear two pitches at once, and the other is doing the melody. And then they shift gears. It's a little bit like a seesaw, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Let's hear track one, please. Hear how the pulsing, that steady eighth note beat, was switching between the upper instrument and the lower instrument.
Yeah, it's also an amazing duet. I always think of something we performed here, the Ravel duo, where we have two instruments playing, but you really feel like it's multiple instruments because of the way he uses color and texture of these two duets. Really incredible music.
So the example we just heard, that prelude, hints a little bit at him straying from traditional tonality. It's still thoroughly tonal. There's nothing really dissonant there, but he takes a couple of harmonic left turns. In the second example, which is the 18th century dance called the gavotte, it's completely different. It's very tonal. It's very conservative. It's like he's taking a glance back over his shoulder at the century that just passed. And to me, it just sounds dainty and elegant. Let's hear track two. It's definitely dancing. Now, this third one, the canzonetta, is like a Venetian boat song. It's in a very lilting Siciliana.
Yes, and most importantly, we have to mention the most famous canzonetta is, of course, a slow movement of the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto. And Gliere did work with Tchaikovsky for a short time. I know many of you, by the way, come to these talks for the juicy things we have to tell them. And the juiciest thing I can tell you about Gliere is that his teachers said that he was a rabid alcoholic. And though incredibly talented, he was never going to amount to anything, with which I fully disagree.
It's unfortunately not uncommon among Russian composers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Exactly.
Mussorgsky died of alcoholism, and Glazunov is known to have conducted when he was the worse for drink, and it came back to haunt a couple of early
Fortunately,
premieres.
Gliere's music is really great, so I don't know how the alcoholism...
So what we want you to listen to in this canzonetta is graceful arpeggios in the cello and a very wistful melody in the violin. Let's hear number 3, please. You can practically feel the gondola slipping through the canals of Venice. It's
Exactly.
very picturesque.
And a lot of Rizky-Korsakov here, actually. I think he borrows liberally from Scheherazade.
Completely understandable, absolutely. The last selection of the Gliere is his scherzo movement, where you have a lot of cross rhythms. Listen to the syncopations and, again, the switching of melody between the two instruments. Number 4, please. Hard to believe there's only 2 instruments playing.
That and also the rhythms are really complicated and hard to hang on to. It's, in a way, he compresses all the syncopations to such a point where you now have syncopations within 3 or 4 bars as opposed to within each bar. So it's really hard to hang on to, but very exciting music.
It's exciting music, and it's very interesting music to watch and to hear. And I'm sure that it will be rendered splendidly this afternoon
We will try.
by Gary and by Beyoncé. We move now to Clara Schumann, Robert Schumann's young bride, who pursued composition actively during her teenage years. Her father was a very powerful and ambitious pedagogue who wanted the best possible education for his daughter, and that included not only piano study with him, but also she learned theory and composition. This is widely considered, as I mentioned in my initial remarks, to be her finest work of chamber music. The first example we're going to hear is more Mendelssohnian than it is Schumannesque, because this piece was written before she was married to Robert, although they were good friends all through her early teen years. And the violin and the piano start. What we're going to hear is the second statement of the theme in the piano, and then the cello will join in. Track 5, please. If I did not know this was by Clara Schumann, I would have guessed Mendelssohn.
Totally, especially the Mendelssohn D minor. But you know, one of the things, I'm so glad you mentioned this was prior to Robert Schumann, because the construction of this young lady, the construction of the piece is just incredibly masterful. And this is what talent is, you know, you don't always have to learn everything in school. I mean, she was able to really figure out how to weave the cello into the violin part, and then the piano part, which you would think would star everything because she herself was a virtuoso piano, is actually very chamber music. It's just part of the texture of the music.
Our next example is from the development section of this first movement, sonata form movement, and what I'd like you to be listening to is how skillfully she navigates modulations from one key to another. It's very secure, her handling, and shows an admirable balance among the parts. Number 6, please. We move now to her second movement, which is marked tempo di menuetto. And interestingly, like the gavotte in the Gliere, it's a very traditional approach to a second movement. Most 19th century composers had started substituting scherzos instead of the traditional minuet. This one is in B flat major, and its trio section is in E flat major. It's very graceful, light, almost retro in its approach to the trio. Number 7, please. The third movement is a very poetic andante that I think is, once again, Mendelssohnian, but it's kind of looking forward to the poetry that Schumann achieved in his finest themes.
Indeed, and also it's really song-like when she's saying, in a way, there's a romantic part to all of the string instruments where they sing all the time. It's really not a virtuoso or a show-off piece. It's a piece that's about color and the texture of the music.
What we're going to hear is the violin has the second statement, the cello is in pizzicato, and the piano is supplying gentle arpeggios to fill out the harmony. Number 8, please. We were talking about this piece last night, and Gary opined that he actually thinks it's a better piece of music than either of Robert Schumann's trios.
I do like it better, and it's not just because I prefer it. I really think there's a lot that she does with the string parts, actually in the piano parts as well,
Yes.
that is quite original and hangs together in a very, very beautiful way.
Her finale is marked allegretto. It's very dramatic, and the example is a fugato that their friend, Robert and Clara's friend, Felix Mendelssohn, admired greatly, and I've mentioned that in my program notes. So we're going to hear how she handles counterpoint. She definitely had a first-class musical education. Number 9, please. This writing just dazzling.
Oh, it's incredible. Let's go back to the fact that Mendelssohn rediscovered Bach, and somebody like Robert and Clara Schumann actually studied Bach fugues, and it was kind of a rite of passage for them to be able to write an excellent fugue. And then just running now to the 21st century, I can tell you firsthand, if you want to commission a composer to write a fugue, they will pay you not to write a fugue. A, it's very difficult. B, it's very hard to come up with a great fugal subject. And B, they think it's really old-fashioned. Just like they did during Bach's time. They said it was very old-fashioned.
Another factor that makes this trio of Clara's such a wonderful companion piece to Robert's quintet that concludes the second half is that he also has a splendid fugato in his finale, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to move next to Samuel Barber, whose Dover Beach for baritone and string quartet, I believe, is a CMSFW debut.
It is a debut.
Opus
3.
We have only rarely had a singer on this series throughout its history.
In fact, this is the first singer in my tenure. Hopefully not the last, but the first time in my tenure.
Absolutely.
Artistic director.
So the poem that Barber set was by Matthew Arnold, and over coffee in the museum's restaurant a little bit earlier, Danny told me that Matthew Arnold wrote that poem during his honeymoon at Dover Beach, which I find astonishing because it's a very dark poem. It's about the loneliness of the human condition, and I'm wondering, was he in an arranged marriage?
Yeah.
But it's an extremely powerful piece and really quite extraordinary. Let's move to the second slide, please. No, the next one. The previous, I'm sorry. The one with the quartet.
Here we go.
Yeah, and I'd like you to tell this story, please.
Well, there's an incredible, I guess, parallel, and it's an incredible thing that none of us really knew was going to happen until we realized it. In a way, we're the second ones to the table. Dover Beach was premiered by Sam Barber in this photograph. You can see him with the Curtis String Quartet, and they went out and actually toured with it in Europe. And it was very unusual, first of all, for a string quartet that was not called the Juilliard Quartet to go and tour Europe, because the Curtis Quartet was not nearly as well known. But more importantly, Sam Barber, 21-year-old Curtis, not yet graduate, for him to go and tour with this quartet was really unusual. Well, our young singer is 21 years old. And we realized this 2 or 3 days ago. So I promise you, we did not plan this, but it is an interesting parallel.
Yes, indeed. I've got 2 examples for you. What I wanted to try to illustrate is how Barber's string parts capture the gentle lapping of water on the beach. Dover, of course, we have a picture of the White Cliffs a bit later. It is one of the most famous sites in England, because if you were coming over from the French coast, that would be your site, that you had gotten past the rough passage on the English Channel and that you were approaching the mainland again. The text is printed in full in your program, and I encourage you to glance at it during the performance. But the example that I've chosen is the line that says, Sophocles with the gentle lapping of the waves on the shore. It's a metaphor for the ebb and flow of human misery. Let's listen to track 10, please. The second example is at a climactic moment in the text where Arnold says, love, let us be true. And the voice is seamlessly integrated with the strings at this point. Let's hear number 11, please. There was precedent for the combination of baritone and string quartet. In fact, Barber's own professor of composition at the Curtis Institute, Rosario Scalera, had written a piece for the same ensemble. And it's a very, I think, loving tribute on the part of Samuel Barber to a teacher he revered.
Indeed, but also I think that this is almost a mini opera, because there's so many things that happen in it. And the beauty of it is, as we were rehearsing, we were discussing this actually, many of the climaxes last literally 2 seconds, because the whole thing is a mini opera, but it is so skillfully constructed. You'll know exactly where the apex of the piece is, where it calms down. It's amazing for Opus 3, truly amazing.
Yeah, 21-year-old composer. And Barber was consistently excellent throughout his career. Well, if Dover Beach is a mini opera, then the Schumann Piano Quintet is a mini symphony.
For sure.
Very symphonic in its approach to chamber music, and yet exuberant and so upbeat and positive. It was written shortly after his marriage to Clara, which her father had adamantly opposed, and the two were just deliriously happy. You hear that in the opening theme, which is exuberant, upbeat, joyous, and effusive. Let's hear that first theme, please. When you're rehearsing, do you feel like dancing?
Actually, no. I think when we were rehearsing, we were looking at it as if it was Beethoven's E-flat major because he wrote so many joyous works in E-flat major. Yeah, it's quite an incredible experience to start this thing, and especially when you take the repeat, you get more joy out of it.
Yes. Well, are we taking the repeat today?
We are taking the repeat.
Okay.
Yes.
Good to know, ladies and
Repeat
gentlemen.
for the price of one.
Right. Now we're going to hear the second theme, and this is a classic contrast. Schumann was sort of buying into the traditional concept of a first theme being strong and masculine and a second theme being lyrical and more feminine in its associations. What we're going to hear is initially the cello with the upper strings and then in counter melodies the piano is coming in with a rhythmic chord pattern. There's definitely some syncopation in there, and what you'll hear is scalar motion in the theme rather than the leaps that we heard in that opening theme. So here is track 13, please. Even in a gentle lyrical second theme there, you hear his symphonic approach. He's involving all four of the string players. Everyone gets a snippet of that melody.
And yet this is a conversation between Clara and himself.
No question. Because, of course, he was writing for Clara. It was her instrument. And the piece has long been a favorite of pianists who play chamber music, as any long-term attendees of the Clyburn competition will know. In the old days, they had a chamber music round in addition to the solo piano round and the concerto round, and the Schumann always was the first choice of most of the finalists. Okay, we're going to move now to the slow movement. This is a form that Beethoven used, actually, in the slow movement to the Seventh Symphony. It's a cross between a rondo and a ternary form with two trio sections. So in form it goes A, B, A, C, A. And Schumann used this form a lot in his piano music, in his chamber music, and in at least one of his symphonies. What we're going to hear is the transition to something that is boldly different in character, and it illustrates how he could change the mood on a dime. Track 14, please. So Gary, this is a slow movement. And what is it like to shift gears and go into something that energetic?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the way he marks it because he uses the word march in the actual tempo marking. That makes things very complicated. Why? Because you can have a funeral march, or you can have a processional, or you can have
John Philip Sousa.
You could have many different kinds of marches. So that makes for an interpretive issue. And you be the judge of whether it's successful when we play it, but the way we kind of approached it is it's in between. It's very serious, but not necessarily tragic, and it sort of gives a leeway into a section like this, or the sunny section, which is a big violin solo with a piano accompaniment. So the contrast between the march-like seriousness and then the lyricism and here virtuosity is really, really great.
He's also very good at creating suspense during that transition with those diminished chords that were very slow and quiet and suspenseful before we had the outburst of the contrasting trio section. We move now to the scherzo, which is one of my favorite movements in all of chamber music, and I find it very Beethovenian. Beethoven was famous, and deservedly so, for making much out of very little seminal material. This entire scherzo is built on rising and falling E-flat major scales. And what he does with it is absolutely magical.
It's also about the rhythm. How many times have we talked in these pre-concert talks about shifting the meter? Now, I don't think I'm revealing anything illegal by telling you that everything that sounds like a downbeat will be exactly one triplet eighth note off. So instead of da 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 da, you can hear ya ba 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 ba. So everything's gonna be 1/8 note off.
So listen for those ascending and descending scales. It's one of the first thing any instrumentalist learns to do, whether it's keyboard, a string instrument, or a wind or brass instrument. Let's hear track 15, please. He also introduces syncopations, and they're present in all four of these movements, aren't they?
It's quite incredible. As I mentioned, Brahms, and of course Brahms, and that big triangle of the Clara Schumann, Robert Schumann, and Brahms continue throughout Brahms' life. But it's really interesting where he got it. It's very possible that he didn't invent the Brahms, that he actually got it from Clara and Robert Schumann.
Well, I would concur with that. Yeah. Then again, Brahms elevated hemiola to a completely different plane, exactly, which is the cross rhythm of 2 beats against 3 in the course of a single bar. All right, the finale, another one of my absolute favorite movements. It's really astonishing what he does here, because we know this piece is in E flat major, and we should open the finale with a clear statement of E flat major, but he doesn't do that. What does he do?
Well, I mean, actually, first thing he does is have the strings play the pulse, and then he makes it much more architectural, in my opinion.
Yes, but he sort of starts us out in G minor before he resolves into a theme that's going to be in E flat major. So we're sort of finding our bearing. It's a little bit like we're sliding on slippery ice, not thin ice, but we just can't get our footing because we're not quite sure if it's going to slip out from underneath us. And then he finally settles in, and we get ourselves anchored in the home tonality of E flat major. Let's listen to number 16, please. So, are we in minor mode or are we in major mode?
Yeah. Hard to tell.
Yes, he does leave that hanging. The last example that we have is also taken from the finale. At the end of this movement, Robert does something that's quite wonderful that I think is also Beethovenian, because Beethoven did something very similar in the finale to the string quartet, Opus 59, number 3. He has a dramatic coda, and then he has it resolve inconclusively, and he starts all over again with a brilliant fugue that just shows off all the instruments. Robert's particular stroke of genius is that this is a double fugue in the case of the finale to the E flat major quintet, and he reintroduces the main theme to the first movement, and so we hear them woven together simultaneously.
Yeah. One thing to just notice, the fugues are oftentimes, if they're not composed properly, very difficult to hear the voices and the counter voices. This is a transparent fugue, so it actually can sound quite digital, but this is a very transparent fugue which feels light.
So let's hear what it sounds like. Schumann's double fugue, number 17, please. Did you recognize the main theme from the first movement? And then, exactly as he finally resolved from G minor to E flat at the beginning of this movement. It's truly exciting, and you will absolutely love how he brings it almost to conclusion, leaves you hanging in midair, and then he does it all over again until he can bring it to just this, again, I have to use the word exuberant and completely satisfying conclusion.
We love playing it, and I hope you love listening to it.
Yes,
Really enjoy this piece. It's really quite something.
A great piece. For those of you who are fortunate enough to be discovering it for the first time this afternoon, I hope you take away a treasure in your ears that you will want to relive at home and in future live performances. For those of you who know the piece well, I'm sure that you'll be as elated as these musicians are going to be in bringing it to you. Thank you very much for being here, and enjoy the concert.
Thank you.